Good morning. I know I always tell you we have a big show, but today it's true and tomorrow. So let me start with the breaking news. Donald Trump is losing his fucking mind. What else is left of his mind is disappearing. And the reason why is he is losing in court. There is a correlation, my friends, between today's thumbnail, you see it right here, the three major court cases that slammed him. You see that? One, two, three. We're going to go over those. There is a correlation between Donald Trump getting smashed in court yesterday, and then in the evening, his going ballistic in all sorts of ways against his bugaboos. Harvard University, yes, he is very obsessed with Harvard, and also against immigrants who are not perceived as white. And those sometimes come together. So Donald Trump put out some batshit crazy executive orders last night. And again, I think it's a lot about not just his agenda, but his ego. He knows he's a loser. He knows he keeps losing. And so what is he going to do? Judges slap down three of his major agenda items. What does he do? Throw up some more. Donald Trump is the emotional equivalent of a whack-a-mole. And the court smashes down one of his executive orders and another pops up. So I just want us to understand that it's bad what he said yesterday in terms of imposing yet another travel ban. He was famous for that during his first term, banning people from coming into the United States from numerous countries. We'll talk about that, as well as slamming Harvard University again. But before we get to his batshit crazy whack a mole game, let's actually talk about where he lost, because this is really huge. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to give you the overview and then we're going to dive in. We've got three judges yesterday, three federal court judges, and these aren't the only cases, right? There were others also, but I'm going to focus on these three. At the top, we have Judge Boseberg. In the middle, we have Judge Lambert, and at the bottom, Judge Carter. Okay, so out of DC, federal court judge Boseberg, he ordered the US, and I'm paraphrasing, the United States must help the Venezuelans that we sent to El Salvador prisons challenge their detention. This is known as habeas corpus, right? So even though the Trump administration is claiming, we can't do anything, these men are now in El Salvador, and that's up to President Bukele. Judge Boseberg said, figure it the fuck out. You've got a week to tell me how you're going to facilitate, how they are going to, and I'll look at you now, how you are going to let these men have due process, because they didn't have notice in a hearing for why they were being deported to another country's prison that we are paying for. Okay, so what would that look like? I don't know, but we were talking about it last night at the dinner table. And my 18-year-old had this idea, and my husband and I were like, what could that look like? So Michael and I were saying, well, they could go down to the US Embassy. They could fly some judges down to the US Embassy in El Salvador and set up a makeshift court where people could have lawyers and the protection of the United States right there to have their hearings. My 18-year-old suggested, well, they could have Zoom hearings. And I think that's the case as well, but we absolutely, I believe, need them to be in a space where they are present with an attorney there. Okay. So that is huge news. And we're going to read from that decision because it is amazing. But let me hit the others. Okay. The second judicial order came from Judge Lambert, also out of DC. And Lambert ordered that the US must continue gender affirming hormone therapy for transgender inmates in federal prisons, as well as giving them the social accommodations that they request. That in terms of, I think they're referring to housing and being in spaces so they are not threatened. So that is, but I don't know the full what all the social accommodations are. But this is huge, not ending folks' gender affirming hormone therapy. Remember, Donald Trump had executive orders to block this. And literally, what this decision said, Lambert said, those executive orders are for shit. They cannot be enforced. You must return to the process and the practice of providing and continuing to provide for transgender inmates the hormone therapy that they have requested. Now, there's more. The third judge, this is Judge Carter, federal judge out of New York, and his order stopped. This was an order folks went into court immediately. Donald Trump had his administration had announced ending Job Corps, the Job Corps program and Job Corps contracts, and Carter said no. He put in place an immediate temporary restraining order so those Job Corps programs still continue. Those are just three cases from yesterday, and they are tremendous. We also saw, and I'm throwing this out here too, the efforts to shut down the Department of Education, an appellate court out of Boston. I think it was the First Circuit Court of Appeals said no. So we are, those are three judges there. We are watching the Trump agenda get crushed right now. I want to do a deeper dive into this case with Boseberg. This is Boseberg. Remember, he's a federal district court judge for the District of Columbia. There were some back and forth with the Supreme Court with the lawsuit brought before his court. And so right now, where it stands is the plaintiffs, the people bringing the case, the class in that lawsuit against the Trump administration involves people who are right now in the CCOT prison in El Salvador. And I'm being general because I can tell you more about the class definition if you like, but that is who it is. It doesn't include folks, it doesn't include Kilmar Abrego Garcia because I believe he has his own case down in Maryland, but he may be in the defined in the class. But it does not include folks in Texas. They have their own lawsuit where they're trying to avoid being deported. So this is men who are in that prison in El Salvador. And let me just share with you, because I think this is utterly fabulous. There are two different documents that court filed. One is an order, and one is a memorandum, right? So the order is quite short; it's just 2 pages long, and it says this is what you need to do. And then there is the legal opinion, which is much longer, describing his reasoning. So let me share that with you because it isn't every single day that you have a judge quoting Kafka. So I think that you can see what I'm looking at, and I'm going to try to make it as big as I can for you. There we go. I think you can see this, friends. Yes. Okay. So let's look at this. This is in the district court for the District of Columbia. You see the plaintiff is JGG and also others versus Donald J. Trump et al. So let's read this memorandum opinion. One morning, Kafka's Joseph K. awakens to encounter two strange men outside his room. As he gets his bearings, he realizes that he is under arrest. When he asks the strangers why, he receives no answer. "We weren't sent to tell you that," one says. "Proceedings are underway, and you'll learn everything in due course." Bewildered by these men and distressed by their message, Kay tries to comfort himself that he lives in a state governed by law, one where all statutes are in force. He therefore demands again, "How can I be under arrest? And in this manner?" "Now there you go again," the guard replies. "We don't answer such questions." Undeterred, Kay offers his papers and demands their arrest warrant. "Good heavens," the man scolds. "There's been no mistake. Our department," he assures Kay, "is only attracted by guilt. It doesn't seek it out. That's the law." "I don't know that law," Kay responds. You'll feel it eventually, the guard says. Holy moly, that's how the judge began. And there, that is a paraphrase and some quotes from Kafka's The Trial. And let me read you the next paragraph, and then we will return to a conversation. The judge continues. Such was the situation into which Franco Reyes Mota, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, and scores of other Venezuelan non citizens say they were plunged on March 15th, 2025. In the early morning hours, Venezuelans held by the Department of Homeland Security at El Valle Detention Facility in Texas were awakened from their cells, taken to a separate room, shackled, and informed that they were being transferred. To where? That they were not told. When asked, some guards reportedly laughed and said that they did not know. Others told detainees incorrectly that they were being transferred to another immigration facility or to Mexico or to Venezuela. Before long, Reyes, Mota, Hernandez Romero, and the other detainees were shuttled onto buses, driven to a nearby airport, and loaded on two planes. As the planes waited on the tarmac, many passengers aboard reportedly began to panic and beg officials for more information, but none was provided. The planes eventually departed that evening and, after a stop in Honduras, landed in El Salvador. Upon their arrival, the detainees were transferred to a Salvadoran mega prison known as the Center for Terrorism Confinement, CCOT. Under what authority? It turns out that the mere hours before the planes took off, President Trump had invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. When the country is at war or has suffered an invasion or predatory incursion, the act authorizes the president to apprehend and remove citizens of the enemy nation, so called alien enemies. Asserting that a Venezuelan gang named Tren de Aragua had committed an invasion and predatory incursion upon the United States, the president directed immigration officials to apprehend and remove any such gang members from the United States. Reyes Mota and Hernandez Romero were among the men the government deemed members of Tren de Aragua. Both vehemently deny any such affiliation and claim that they were never able to challenge the accusations before being removed. This court, at a swiftly convened hearing on March 15th, ordered the government not to relinquish custody of the men, but that mandate was ignored. Such defiance is currently the subject of the court's contempt inquiry. And then we go on from there. Whoa, whoa. If I were teaching either a literature class or a legal class related to due process and the rule of law, I would assign that decision. It is astonishing that this is happening in the United States. The only good thing that comes from this is the fact that Judge Boseberg isn't having any of this bullshit. And let's hope the United States Supreme Court backs him up. Also, I was pleased to see Andre um, Hernandez Romero's name there. You know, you might remember his name, that he is a hairdresser and makeup artist who is terrified for his life, who is not a member of any violent gang, he says, nor do I believe that he is. And the bottom line is no, first of all, as we know, the Supreme Court has separately ruled in the case out of Texas, the people who are in Texas, that right now Donald Trump cannot use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people, first of all. It's not appropriate. But even if it were, the Supreme Court had ruled in an earlier case of Boseberg that everybody is supposed to get due process in this country, notice, substantial notice, more than 24 or 12 or 48 hours. We don't know how much notice, and a hearing, meaning an opportunity to be heard and challenge the allegations that would be triggering their deportation or their rendition to El Salvador. Okay, so that is what's going on there. And that is getting a little bit into the weeds for you. But this was a blockbuster decision. It is huge. And I want you to appreciate how important this is. I don't think I have ever seen something so critical, something so pulling out Donald Trump's bullshit. So let's see again if the Supreme Court backs them up. I also want to say how significant providing transgender care for inmates with the hormone therapy and social accommodations that they request. And in that case, the Judge Lambert was ruling related to a certified class action lawsuit on behalf of more than 1,000 inmates who have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. So this is huge. The order itself is critical as well, and I just want you to know that this is a good development. Now, we can talk if we want to about the batshit crazy stuff Donald Trump is doing. You know, this Harvard executive order and the the new latest one, and the also order to not to ban people from various countries from coming to the US. So let's talk about Harvard actually suspending the ability. Here we go. So Harvard essentially suspends. I'm going to pull Harvard. The White House suspended the ability of Harvard to bring in basically um essentially, huge swath of foreign students. Okay, so this is let me just pull this up for you because I want you to see this. Students who are already here can stay, but we're talking about new students. Let me share the screen. This is his ongoing vendetta against Harvard. We've talked about that. So this was from last night, and it's called Enhancing National Security by Addressing Risks at Harvard University. It's like they're just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what will stick. Here's his proclamation. Again, batshit crazy. Here's what he said. Admissions into the United States to attend, conduct research, or teach at our nation's institutions of higher education is a privilege granted by our government, not a guarantee. That privilege is necessarily tied to the host institution's compliance and commitment to following federal law. Harvard University has failed in this respect, among many others. Then he goes on to talk about the student exchange visa program. And he's complaining that our adversaries, including the People's Republic of China, try to take advantage of American higher education by exploiting the student visa program for improper purposes and by using visiting students to collect information at elite universities in the United States. I would hope that they would collect information like about democracy and spread it in the world. That's not what he said. So let's get to the point. He said, I have determined that it is necessary to restrict the entry of foreign nationals who seek to enter the United States solely or principally to participate in a course of study at Harvard University or in an exchange visitor program hosted by Harvard. And then he is citing the Immigration and Naturalization Act sections, saying that it authorizes the president to suspend entry of any class of aliens whose entry would be detrimental to interest in the United States. So he's trying to hook this on a different authority than previously articulated. And so first, he's suspending entry to any alien to the United States as a non-immigrant to study at Harvard. And then the scope is only dealing with aliens who attempt to enter to begin attending Harvard through the SEVP after the date of this proclamation. And so it goes on and on and on from there. This man is nuts. He has such a vendetta. Shall I remind you that we did a whole segment of this show about why the fuck is he so obsessed with Harvard? Okay. I really don't know. Now it seems like it seems crazy to you and I, but let's move on to something more positive. The person of the day. Our person of the day is Kim Sajid. She's a director of the Smithsonian Institution National Portrait Gallery. And she was told that she was fired. She was let go from her job. But guess what? She is still showing up at work. I love this for her and for us. Why not? why not keep showing up at work? And so I'm going to share the screen with this article. Here we have Kim Sajid. Director Kim Sajid is still at work. This it was updated yesterday. The president said he had fired the museum leader, setting up a standoff between the White House and the Smithsonian. So, President Trump's latest attempt to assert control over an elite American cultural institution has turned into a high stakes Washington standoff. So, he announced last Friday that he was firing her, but she keeps showing up for work. She's been conducting meetings and handling other museum business as she did before. When he fired her, Donald Trump said on Truth Social that he was firing her because she is a highly partisan person and because she is a strong supporter of DEI. He did not provide any legal reasoning to fire her, and it's clear that he doesn't have it. So she is showing up for work. It's the equivalent of, I don't know, my neighbor up the street telling me that I have been fired from my job at the law school. It's amusing. Like, okay, crazy person. The difference is this is the president of the United States. So Kim Sajid is our person of the day. Now, I've got more to share with you. There is trouble in paradise or hell, if you may refer to it as that. As you probably have heard over the past few days, Elon Musk has been openly trashing Donald's so called big, beautiful bill. Now, he's publicly claiming it because it increases the deficit by trillions of dollars, something that we all know, but the Trump administration has been ignoring the CBO estimates. You've heard Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, scoff at that. You've heard advisor Kevin Hassett scoff at that, but we know that's the case. So why do we think that all of a sudden Elon Musk is calling this a monstrosity? Word is that it doesn't have much to do with the deficit, but it has more to do with the fact that Elon didn't get every single thing that he wanted out of this legislation. It doesn't really matter. He's blowing it up. And let me be clear, Elon Musk is no friend of ours. There's no reason to pat him on the back and say, good for you, man. As my friend Mara Quint said on the truth on Blue Sky, the enemy of my enemy is still my enemy. I need a lot of enemies. I thought that was funny because you've heard the old cliche, the enemy of my friend is my friend. No, Elon Musk is not to be trusted. And the reason why he's against the bill isn't because it cuts Medicaid and Medicare and hurts us. It's the opposite. He thinks there should be more cuts for the middle class and people of less means and the poor so that he can get more goodies for himself. And so I want to return to that theme, but I'm going to share with you Lawrence O'Donnell talking about this the other day, lest we be deceived. Let's play it.
Always increased the national debt. That is the only thing they've ever done with the national debt. And Democratic.
I'm sorry, let me start at the beginning. Lawrence is giving us the real deal. Democrats are always accused of being reckless with funds, and Republicans use that in the rhetoric, saying that we are irresponsible. And then, of course, that's not what happens. Democrats tend to go the other direction. Let's listen to what Lawrence had to say about this bill in the context of Republican rule.
The national debt. Republicans have always increased the national debt. That is the only thing they've ever done with the national debt. And Democratic administrations have always reduced the deficits that have been run up by reckless Republican presidents and Republican Congresses. That is the budgetary cycle we've been in since the 1980s. Republican presidents increase the deficits. Democratic presidents from Bill Clinton forward come into office and reduce the deficits created by the Republican presidents. And then when Republican presidents get another chance, they run up the deficits again, and they always do it exactly the same way, with massive tax cuts for the rich. And that is now an old story that Elon Musk learned today. Elon Musk, the person who Donald Trump calls both a genius and a boy, just learned that today. He just learned today who runs up the national debt, who increases the budget deficit every single time a Republican president is in the White House. That is exactly what happens. And every single time a Democratic president is in the White House, those budget deficits come down. Bill Clinton got it down to a balanced budget by the year 2000. And George W. Bush then immediately raised the national debt by $1 trillion tax cut.
I remember this.
To the already massively wealthy. The Republicans are going to massively increase the budget deficit and increase the national debt again.
So this is the context. This is the context. Musk knows what's going on. Lawrence has his number. Now let's talk about the other side. Let's get into the weeds with Maria Cantwell talking on CNN about what this bill is going to do to hurt us. And of course, when Charles Gable was on here, he only could talk about a slice of it. And so this is not the only bad stuff in this bill. And here she is with Caitlin Collins. Let's go.
Heard from a lot of Republicans, your Republican colleagues who have sat in this chair have said, Democrats are fear-mongering. We're not cutting Medicaid. No one's going to lose benefits if they are not able-bodied, working, able adults. That this is just reforms to get fraud out of Medicaid. What would you say to that?
That is just flat out wrong, and they know it. And when they tried to block grant Medicaid, as I mentioned, it was a similar thing. They thought the details wouldn't matter. But thank God 3 Republican senators joined us and very famous vote, and we stopped them from block granting Medicaid. In that instance, so we've had letters from Republican county commissioners, Republican state legislators, healthcare officials saying don't make these cuts. So this isn't a partisan issue. This is people who understand that in fragile populations and in hard to serve areas that this kind of cut can be devastating to a community.
So what do you say, though, because, President Trump has been phoning Republican senators who have also had questions about this, including Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who's been raising many questions about cuts to Medicaid and critical of those changes, saying that it will hurt Missouri, it'll hurt hospitals. But he said today that he just had a great talk with President Trump about the big, beautiful bill. That's what passed the House and is now going to the Senate. He said, again, no Medicaid benefit cuts. So should people feel reassured by that?
I don't know if when you were commenting earlier that Senator Hawley was on the record about the House bill, I don't know. But if to me, those are cuts. And I hope that he thinks they're cuts and that he's not just going to get into the same semantics. When Speaker Johnson says, oh, well, we want able-bodied people, you don't get a $770 billion cut out of Medicaid by saying that some able-bodied people just have to come up to work for some work hours.
Okay. So that's the reality. Maria Cantwell tells the truth. Not the most dynamic speaker, though. We need to do better. I don't like when she says, well, I hope Hawley isn't going to say blah, blah, blah. Don't give him the benefit of the doubt. That sentence should have began with, he knows better. And either he is deceiving the American people or he doesn't know how to do math and is being poorly served by his team. And given that Hawley graduated from Yale Law School, I think he's trying to pull the wool over the eyes of all of us, period. And that is what the fuck she should say. Okay? But she didn't. And I don't want to criticize her, but I just want to say there's a better way to do this. And let me share with you how you should deal with people like Josh Hawley. This is Kate Shaw, law professor, constitutional law professor, who happens to be married to Chris Hayes, throwing that out there. And here she is as a witness the other day before a hearing, and as an expert at a hearing the other day, and Josh Hawley is trying to pull out his, do his bullshit song and dance, and she calls him out. Let's play it.
Principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s. And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit strange?
A very plausible explanation, Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
you must
this
that as
was
a
never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no, actually.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator, and the 1960s is where some scholars sort of locate the beginning of this, but
others.
One
before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first. There were others in the 20s.
The Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system of law.
Good for her. I think a system where there are no legal constraints on the president is a very dangerous system of law. She called him out at the beginning. He was bullying her. She is smarter than him, or he thinks she is, or he just wants to dominate and talk over her. The reality is, it's a plausible explanation that Donald Trump has been engaging in more lawless activity, and that is why there are more nationwide injunctions. Okay. It's fun times. Now, I got some more. This isn't even crazy town. Speaking of hearings, guys, you got to see this. Linda McMahon, head of the Department of Education, as you know, was before the Senate on Tuesday. But yesterday, she appeared before the House, and it didn't go any better. And if you can believe it, it went even worse. So let's listen to McMahon flub her answer on a question about teaching the Holocaust in schools. Because remember, she's against diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to point out to you something before we get here. Someone who I adore, former head of the NAACP, Cornell. Oh my gosh, I'm totally spacing on. Hold on, I'm having a name. Cornell Brooks. Sorry, I didn't want to call him Cornell West because that is not who it is. Cornell Brooks. We've been, social media correspondents for a while, and he put something up to say we need to hang together. I think that people need to understand as follows, that the Nazis, and I think that you probably know this, but the Nazis, and this is documented, the Nazis in Germany looked to the United States in terms of the practices during Jim Crow and segregation. Also, separately, something he did not mention, in terms of the eugenics ideology, and thought what was going on in the U.S. during and post-slavery was good. And that was the ideology that they used against Jewish people and others. 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust. So this is this Ubermensch, this white master race. That concept from Germany is inextricably linked to the subjugation of Black people in America under slavery, Jim Crow, into this day. So you cannot say DEI only means one thing. Okay, so let's listen to her flub.
What do you mean, for example, Madam Secretary, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time, Madam Secretary, Different Secretary, would the Harvard Medical School, who is looking to hire an immunologist, would that person need to adhere to HHS Secretary Kennedy's view on the efficacy of vaccines?
Listen, we all know that we should have our universities look at what all the programs are.
I don't think you really thought through this viewpoint diversity issue
that you're trying to put forth is a false narrative.
Okay.
And the funding is a privilege.
Madam Secretary, reclaim my time. Does refusing to hire a Holocaust denier as a member of Harvard's history department faculty count as an ideological litmus test?
I believe that there should be diversity of viewpoints relative to teachings and opinions on campuses.
But what about this situation of Harvard's history department, and they're looking for another department member? Would being a Holocaust denier count?
Well, I do know that Harvard did replace its head of Middle Eastern Studies even before we looked at it because they believed that they needed to make changes already.
Okay.
I'm shocked. There is no limit. When she was asked about should Harvard be required to consider being a Holocaust denier as a disqualification for being hired, she doesn't answer. There is no. If I remember when presidents of universities were crucified when they gave these kinds of answers before Congress, and what about her? It's crickets. Let's listen to what happened on CNN with Scott Jennings trying to defend this, and Abby Phillips, who's leading this roundtable, and others making it plain that McMahon flubbed this, and there's no defense at all. Let's go.
No, the answer ought to be, what kind of litmus test is Harvard putting on its faculty now?
Yes.
Only 3% of its faculty are Republicans.
I mean, she didn't have a note card in front of her to tell her the answer, and this is what happens when you have somebody who lied about having an education degree. They didn't teach about the Holocaust maybe when she was getting her French degree. If she actually has that.
The reality
we also didn't even.
You're accusing her of being a Holocaust denier?
Please, Scott. Hold on a second.
This is outrageous.
Excuse me, Scott. Stop. Everybody stop. Everybody stop for a second. Excuse me, Scott. Nobody accused her of being a Holocaust denier.
You're implying that that's what she wants.
No one did
You're
that.
implying.
It is completely.
The line of inquiry
Scott,
here
just
is an
stop for just a
implication
second.
that she's like, sure,
it is
let's do that.
completely disingenuous for you to sit at this table and say that we accused her of being a Holocaust denier.
I think it's disingenuous to portray this interaction the way you are.
Absolutely no one said that. It is
How are you
disingenuous.
portraying it? How are you portraying it?
It's disingenuous. It's disrespectful.
I
and
think,
it's
I think
wrong.
the
question was disingenuous.
Excuse me.
It was a disingenuous question.
How is it a disingenuous question? The other part of the question is, if you are an election denier, and Harvard said you can't be an election denier and teach at this school, is that a litmus test?
The question is what?
I love this. Now, I see people in the comments hate this show. Some people do. And I understand it's loud and people are talking over each other. But that's what my dinner table was like when I was growing up. And yes, it's pretty brutal. It's like being in a brawl. But Abby pulls it together. Plus, I love the women on her show. I think there was a host from the radio show who I just saw there. And I really appreciate Black women saying it like it is, like this, and being able to have these arguments with others, like, and I use the word other to describe someone like a white conservative male, if that's what Scott Jennings is. I think he's just a clown performing on television. But this matters. And I don't always show excerpts from this, but I like this conversation because this is the kind of stuff you see at bars or at parties out there in the world if you are not in a bubble or only around people who think like you. And I don't mean a bubble in a bad way. There's a reason to protect yourself. You shouldn't have to expose yourself if you don't want to. But that is the world I have seen. And it's really helpful to see the games they are playing there. Scott is claiming that they were accusing her of being a Holocaust denier. That is not what they were accusing her of being. They were showing the limits that if you want to draw a line there, which they actually thought she was going to say, well, I don't want a Holocaust denier. And then they could say, well, okay, what about an election denier? Like, is that ideological or is that just reality based? Right? That's where they were going with that. And she took the wrong turn. And so no one was calling her denier, but she flubbed it. And then this is where it turned. Okay, guys, one more thing before we get to crazy town. Okay, so this is my last money, law, and power situation. Oh shoot, I have lost my, I think I have my, 1 second. I think I had my crazy town, but hold on 1 sec. Sorry, it's rough around here to be me. Okay, so we've got 2 days ago, Donald Trump Jr., little Donnie, was on with Andrew Ross Sorkin. And Andrew Ross Sorkin was trying to get him to expose himself as fucking hypocrite, grifting off the American people. And although Don Jr. didn't admit it, I think you need to see this because this is exposure to them out and out admitting what the fuck they're doing. Let's listen.
Okay, you may not believe this. I want your father and this White House to have all the credibility in the world. And invariably, people are always going to question whatever any president does. But one of the things that people do demonstrably question is they say this meme coin that your father has creates the opportunity for foreign adversaries, people in the U.S., anybody, if they want, to effectively funnel money
as bad as Hunter's art. It's as bad as Hunter's art or the Clinton Foundation with her getting back into the White House. It just seems like a way that greases the skids for influence.
So I think the meme coin, you don't know who's actually doing any of these things, right? So it's different because it's hard to influence if you don't actually know where the stuff's coming from, right? So I wasn't involved in the meme coin.
Hold on. He's saying this meme coin that you don't know where the money is coming from. Sure, you donate a little here, a little there. They don't give a fuck. But the people who made the big donations, he says, you don't know where it's coming from? You damn well better believe the entities, whether they used, conduit companies or what have you, that purchase a huge chunk of meme coin, they fucking let Donald Trump know, period. And you know that. So this is bullshit. But let's continue.
More focused on, obviously, the stable coin, the Bitcoin mining, some of those things. But, the reality is, I think a lot of these things in the meme coin...
You're not taking responsibility for the meme.
I'm just saying, the reality of the meme coin is it's sort of a proof of concept that the crypto world understands exactly what I was talking about earlier, that the markets may not necessarily be fair. The traditional banking system may not be fair to them. So it's a proof of concept of what I think we can move the needle in crypto. And I think that's going to be the future of finance. It's going to be the future of banking, almost without question, if we can accelerate that process by going all in on it.
But you've heard from people in the crypto industry, I imagine some of your friends who have said that some of these coins and what's happening may undermine a little bit of what's happening because people are questioning it, right?
I have not heard that from anyone, actually. What I hear from those people is like, thank you for doing this. You're giving us the legitimacy that we fought for so long. And this isn't just a conservative issue, Joe. I mean, these are highly libertarian people. This is actually one of those, 50 million holders of, some sort of crypto, whether it's Bitcoin, stables, ETH, Sol, whatever it may be. There's 50 million in America, and they're not all right-wing. These are people who just believe in freedom. They've seen what's happening, and they're looking for a corollary and a response.
I got one.
What a load of shit. He doesn't answer the question. He's claiming that he's helping out the industry. These altruistic Trump family members, always looking out for everyone else. You think that's actually in their family code? Donald, Donnie, Ivanka, Eric, Barron. You think in their code is, let's find a way to help out others. And that's what he's doing. Doesn't really answer the question. Now, I got something that doesn't seem great. Okay, so we have seen fabulous reporting from Wired magazine and other enterprises about what's going on inside of DOGE, and also who the youngsters are that are getting appointed to high-level positions. And let me be clear, there are 22-year-olds and 25-year-olds who are utterly brilliant, who should have really good positions, but they should not be at the top of an organization because they don't have the connections, they don't have the experience, and there's no way of knowing if they're the one person who has all the judgment in the world, or if they're the one person who has not a fully developed frontal cortex or the experience to deal with situations involving, I don't know, the security of the entire fucking nation. So this seems bad. I don't know if you saw this. This was at a ProPublica, who is doing equally good work as Wired on this topic. And what you can see here is that literally this is a 22-year-old whose name is Thomas Fugate. He just graduated from college a year ago. I'm reading ProPublica's thumbnail here. No apparent national security expertise. Fugate is now the Department of Homeland Security official tasked with overseeing the government's main hub for combating violent extremism. He is leading terrorism prevention in our country. Excuse me if I don't feel comfortable with this decision. So this is what is going on. This is why we need to be making plans to be out in the streets on June 14th. It was great to see Ezra Levin here. And as a reminder, more and more people are signing up. This is great. This is Rick Steves, travel writer, and he's going to a protest. Here's what he had to say. While we don't have a lot of tools left, we do have our voices. So many of our representatives in Congress are motivated by one thing, staying in power. And they can bow to pressure from Mar-a-Lago, or they can bow to pressure from pro-democracy voters. So on June 14th, at No Kings rallies and marches across our nation, let's come together to let these representatives know that ultimately the people are still more of a threat to their power than our president's Versailles. Okay, I love that. Let's do it. Now, I am going to tell you the thing I wanted to share with you for Crazy Town. Let me do the setup for that. So Crazy Town today involves the question of what the hell is going on with DOGE. Specifically, I am thinking, why in the world does no one still know who is running DOGE now? Is it Elon Musk? Is it somebody else? I don't know, but let's listen to Representative Mark Pocan grill Russ Vought on this very topic. And before I do that, I need to play our Crazy Town music. Can't skip that. Okay, we have it right here. You're going to love this. It is a total word salad.
Is taken over after Elon Musk just left. And he's leading. It sounds like this is a bit of a circus. Who's in charge of DOGE?
The cabinet agencies that are in charge of the DOGE consultants that work for them are fundamentally in control of DOGE.
Oh, that's an answer only a mother could love. All right.
Oh my God, that is insane. Okay, guys, so thank you for joining me. Tomorrow, big show. We have Ben Collins, who now owns The Onion. Yes, runs The Onion. I'm sorry. So you know they say, no, not The Onion? Tomorrow is, yes, it is The Onion. Ben Collins, his handle over on Blue Sky is Tim Onion. You know why? Because at one point, Donald Trump referred to the head of Apple, Tim Cook, as Tim Apple. So his handle on Blue Sky is Tim Onion. He'll be joining us tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of laughs and a lot of deep dives into is it satire? Is it The Onion or is it not? Maybe I'll give him that quiz to see if he knows. Okay, love you guys. See you all tomorrow.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show, where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.